Love, wisdom, and power. Once God explained to me that his main qualities are love, wisdom, and power. This is why those who aspire to merge with him should develop themselves according to these three fundamental parameters. Many years later, the same words came to us from God through the Book of Jesus. Mastering each of the mentioned qualities of God is possible both in the course of ordinary life, provided that it is inspired by the right aspiration, and by means of special psychoenergetic methods. Jesus taught and is continuing to teach the same thing. Our great contemporary, Messiah Sathya Sai Baba, is giving detailed explanations of the same principles for the modern people. Invaluable advice on bringing oneself up to the highest ethical standards can also be found in lessons of other teachers who attained God, such as Juan Matus, Rajneesh, and others. So we should start developing the ethical aspect with studying what God wants us to be in this respect, with tracing our vices and eliminating them through repentance in particular, and with cultivating positive qualities. And for those who advance boldly on this path, who aspire to practical cognition of God and are full of sincere love for Him, the crucial stage of their ethical self-correction in terms of controlling one's emotions will be trainings on psychic self-regulation. These trainings begin with acquiring proficiency in shifting the concentration of the consciousness from one chakra to another, since chakras are organs responsible for the generation of emotions and other psychic states. For instance, the anahata chakra is the organ that generates emotion of heart love. Therefore, if we have purified and developed this energy structure by special exercises, the mere entering it with a concentration of the consciousness will be enough to get us out of states of fatigue, irritation, and anxiety, and into the light and pure states of love and tranquility. Those who practice such methods notice that people's attitude towards them starts to change gradually. We begin to create favorable energy fields for those around us, which makes people feel better. They find communicating with us easier and more pleasant, so the change in the attitude follows. If we need a burst of energy for some activity, then we will find the well-functioning Manipura chakra, or even the whole set of the three lower chakras, the structure also known as hara, very helpful. Mental activity cannot be effective if the chakras located in the head are impure and undeveloped. The condition of the chakras directly impacts functioning of the organs located in the corresponding parts of the body. The mere cleansing of the corresponding chakras can easily cure many chronic diseases. Development of the wisdom aspect includes two main stages. The first one is accumulation of knowledge and development of the thinking abilities, ability to discern false teachings and concepts from the true ones, and creative abilities of the intellect, i.e. the ability to find fresh decisions, ingenuity in small as well as in big matters, indicate a high level of his development. Studying in various educational institutions, reading books, intellectual games, intellectual efforts in scientific, professional, and educational activities. All of this contribute to positive evolution of human souls. Engaging in a serious religious practice without a developed intellect is extremely dangerous. In this case, it is very easy to get under the influence of false and destructive concepts, like those, for example, which assert that drinking one's own urine in great quantities makes for spiritual progress of a person, or that liberation can be achieved by casting off all ethical norms and through spontaneity of behavioral reactions. These people cannot distinguish between love and lust, tenderness and sugariness, subtlety and coarseness, God and devil. They take voices of demons and devils for God's voice, and surrender to them in their actions. They take great delight in possessing and using what they call their personal power, while being attuned, in fact, to the diabolic coarseness. Psychoenergetic work is not for the mentally weak. The task of such people for the time being is self-improvement through service, strengthening of their faith, accumulation of knowledge, and through ethical self-correction. The second stage of development of the wisdom aspect relates to real exploration of multidimensional space by the consciousness of the seeker and cognizing of the consciousness that dwells there, including the consciousness of the Creator. This process brings about a gradual displacement of original human egocentrism with God-centrism. The most profound wisdom can possibly be achieved by an incarnate man through the ability to see the phenomena of the material world with God's eyes, literally from God, instead of seeing them from the small self attached to the body, as it is the case with almost all people. Fix your mind on me, God teaches us in the Bhagavad Gita. In other words, we have to try first to gain an understanding of what God is, and what role we play in the creation in light of the fact that He exists. If we succeed in this, then through special spiritual practices, we can gain the ability to submerge ourselves as consciousnesses into Him, to get closer to the full and final mergence with Him. The ability to control the orientation of the mind and consciousness, as opposed to mere reflexive reacting to the stimuli coming from outside or inside the body. 2. Cannot be gained without special psychoenergetic training. I am talking about working with indriyas. Indriyas is a Sanskrit term. It denotes tentacles of the consciousness. An ordinary person is not the master of the body that he or she lives in, but rather a slave of the body. He or she is attached to the body, just like a driver handcuffed tightly to the steering wheel and chained to the seat of the car. The cars differ from one person to another. Someone's is new and well-functioning, whereas another one's may be decrepit and falling apart. Man, as a consciousness, is usually stuck in one particular chakra, which is often contaminated and not functioning properly, and moves to some other chakra, if at all, not voluntarily, but only when being forced to do it by the needs of the body. When it hurts somewhere, or there is a sort of sinking or pleasant sensation somewhere else, man looks out of this vehicle only through the senses, vision, hearing, smell, etc. When doing this, man as if stretches the tentacles of the consciousness through the sense organs. We can watch ourselves, for example. Here I am, listening to the radio. My indriyas are stretching from my ears to the radio set. But suddenly the phone rings. I instantly shift my indriyas to it, having taken them off the radio set. Now they are on the phone, and there is no radio to me anymore. We also stretch our indriyas through the mind to objects or to people when we think about them. Sensitive people can perceive or even see other people's indriyas directed at them or at someone else with clairvoyance. Depending on the emotional state of the sender, his or her indriyas may have a favorable, neutral, unpleasant, or even pathogenic impact on the object. The latter phenomenon is called the evil eye. If an unkind and, at the same time, psychoenergetically strong person touches someone with the indriyas, he or she infuses the energy of his or her bad emotions into that someone, and that one starts to feel bad or may even get sick as a consequence. Let us make the following conclusion out of this. Our emotional state, especially if we already possess some amount of personal power, is not only our personal business anymore. We need to remember that we can do considerable harm to others with our bad emotions, even involuntarily. On the other hand, we can help others, help them in particular if we send our love to them. As we develop ourselves as consciousnesses in the right direction, we gradually free ourselves from the fetters that chain us to the body. First, we become capable of moving freely with the concentration of the consciousness within the body from one chakra or major meridian to another, and acquire the ability to rid the body of various impurities. All this dramatically improves our health. After that, it becomes feasible to us to move outside the body, to grow in size as consciousnesses, to develop personal power, which allows us to move from one eon to another, thus exploring the multidimensional nature of the universe. A developed consciousness, which has moved out of the body, can be compared to an amoeba, which stretches its indriyas freely without the aid of the sense organs of the body to objects and draws itself to them. As we progress in refining the consciousness, we become able to enter into more subtle eons in this manner, up to the abode of the primordial consciousness, the consciousness of God the Father. Man's personal power is not the power of the body, but that of the consciousness. It may become either diabolic or divine, depending on which direction we follow in our personal development. And this in turn is determined by what emotional states we are accustomed to. Correct development of the personal power cannot be achieved unless we keep the body healthy and active. Therefore, physical work, athletic workouts, physical conditioning, and proper nutrition are very important, especially if they are cultivated from the childhood. The body has to become strong and healthy in order to make one really capable of high spiritual achievements. The energy structure necessary for intensive growth of the individual consciousness is a set of the 3 lower chakras. This is called hara, or lower dantian. But it would be a gross mistake if one starts spiritual work with development of this structure, since gaining personal power before having the developed function of love, and without being profoundly adequate from the ethical standpoint, can tempt one into cultivating ethical vices. In this case, psychoenergetic training, instead of bringing one great benefit, will be tremendously harmful. This is why development of the spiritual heart must be given priority in psychoenergetic work, especially in the beginning of the path. The ability to look at the world from anahata and to preserve this state even in extreme situations should be used as the criteria for judging whether a disciple can be taught the methods of increasing the power of the consciousness. What is love? Love has multiple aspects. It manifests itself as care, tenderness, devotion, self-sacrifice, active service to God, which is realized through service to other people called karma yoga. Work not for reward, but in order to please God, and in many other ways. The foundation of living in the state of love is constant staying with the consciousness in anahata, transforming oneself as consciousness through this into constant emotion of love, which is being radiated to all people, all living beings. One of the principal manifestations of love is tenderness, including the sexual aspect of it. It should be noted here that the ethically correct sexual life directly contributes to developing the ability to love. God is love. If we want to merge with Him, we have to transform ourselves into love as well, into consciousness, constantly living in the state of godlike love. This is when we become these disciples of God, whom He grants all other aspects of wisdom and then accepts us in Himself. This is the principal precondition for the ability to walk the straight path to Him. But those who oppose love oppose God. Upon developing the spiritual heart, a follower of the straight path learns how to expand it beyond the bounds of the body, first for several meters, then filling the entire earth with it, and then even wider. This is the optimal way of breaking the identification with the body, the correct way of developing the consciousness, and of gaining experience of being and acting without the body while it is still alive. Those who have developed themselves to such a level shed all attachment to the body and do not fear death anymore. They find out that now it does not matter to them whether they possess a body or not, and that the death of the body will be liberation from unnecessary earth's troubles. For such spiritual warriors, the moment comes when the Creator will reveal Himself to them and let them come into His abode. Love for people. Love can and should be expressed in both emotions and actions. We talked about emotional love already, and will continue to talk about it below. Here, we will just reiterate, making a special emphasis, that developing love in oneself is a major method of spiritual self-perfection. This is the method by which we transform ourselves as consciousnesses into godlike love first, and then into divine love, uniting and merging with God. This love must not be confused with lust, selfish sexual passion. True love is not the same as sugariness, a travesty of love, something which takes place when one is attempting to demonstrate love when the spiritual heart is void of this emotion. A feature of true love is a lack of elements of violence and compulsion in it. Otherwise, it is not love anymore, but constraint, rape. Love is subtle, tender, and free from egotism and egocentrism. It rests on caring about the other, not oneself. Maturing of love must be based on the true knowledge of God and knowledge of the meaning of human life. As this love accumulates knowledge and experience, it becomes wise. As it develops in helping others, including fighting for their welfare, and by means of practicing special meditative techniques, it becomes strong. Love, wisdom, and power. These are qualities of God. Those who have mastered them up to the divine level infuse themselves easily into the primordial consciousness, thus completing their evolution in the human form. After that, they continue to exist in the capacity of an active part of God the Father. But one cannot walk this path to divinity to the end just by thinking about it. This is a long and difficult work of transforming oneself. This work can be compared to the work of an athlete who spends many years in persistent and exhausting trainings in order to bring the body to perfection. But working with the consciousness is much more difficult. In this work, just like in athletics, the person as a rule cannot achieve serious results without the help of an instructor. On the spiritual path, this can be either an embodied guru, a person who has already walked the entire path, or the most part of it, and knows personally the goal of the path, or God himself may become one's guru, like it was the case in my life. Karma Yoga is a universal method of self-development on the path to perfection, which God constantly suggests to us. This is a way of perfecting oneself through service to God, which is carried out by helping people in their evolution. This can be sharing spiritual knowledge with them, teaching them reading and writing, working in scientific, pedagogic, or medicine fields, practicing art, building homes, manufacturing clothing, producing food, protecting people from various criminal scum, the dregs of the evolution. What is important about this is that every kind of activity has to be performed not for a reward, nor selfishly, but for the sake of helping people to advance to perfection, including supporting their existence on the earth, in this school of God. This principle of Karma Yoga does not necessarily imply that work should be unpaid. This would be absurdity. But those who received help as a gift must think about giving something back. People who do not respond to gifts with gifts are considered by God as thieves. It should be noted here that activities that cause harm to people are not Karma Yoga and cannot be considered righteous. These are, for example, production and distribution of alcoholic drinks, tobacco, products, and other psychedelic substances, taking part in aggressive wars, preaching any type of hatred and aggressiveness, promoting fear, killing animals for using their bodies for food or for utilizing the skin torn of their bodies, unnecessary destruction of plants, etc. In other words, Karma Yoga implies helping people only in what is good.